Hi everybody, and just to be clear, I am actually Danish, but I've spent the last 9 years abroad, so my preferred language is still English. Today I'm going to talk a bit about how we can use dance as a way to facilitate change. Yep, there I am. So as I've just mentioned, I've spent 9 years abroad, and I recently returned to Denmark, and I'm finding it a bit of a challenge returning back into Danish society. With dance as my preferred language, I have traveled the world developing and leading projects using the body as an entrance point for communicating. Tonight, I'm going to give you 3 examples of my work, 3 very different examples, and then if I have the time, I'm going to give you a very, very short how-to so that you too, with encouragement, can go out into the world and help facilitate change. So why dance? Well, dance has this amazing ability to transcend any language. It's something that, for me, is really amazing to just participate in. And it's about physicality, it's about rhythm, it's about making friends, it's about finding love and passion all through the work of the body. So one of the main things that I try to do in my work is to think about how you can take really complex and quite sort of meta ways of thinking. So for example, how do I make a piece about a sunflower that's about to die, and how do I put that into a manageable structure so that my audiences can read and understand what I'm trying to say. And yes, the love is one of the big things that really matters for me and my practice. I'm going to show you 20 seconds of a clip, and I encourage you to think about what you see, not to think about what you should think that you're seeing. So with that in your back pocket, put it into your back pocket. We're going to return to it later. I'm going to introduce my first project. Now, this was a project that I developed in 2014 with an artist called Hung. It was a piece for the Gwangju Biennale, which took place in South Korea. And Hung conceptualized this piece, which Anso Christensen and myself then choreographed. What we did was we were presented with a series of images that related to the Gwangju uprising, which was a big political uprising that took place in local history in South Korea. These images were then, through a process of sort of interpreting and trying to make meaning of them, transferred into movement, which we then presented in a flash mob performance that was set in a gallery structure for the Gwangju Biennale. Hung really wanted to highlight this unexplored period of history, and what she really, really wanted to do was to use participants from the local community so that we had this group of people that lived in the city where the uprising took place to actually do this piece, which makes sense when you think about it. So yeah, our chosen medium was a flash mob performance. And the impact that we were able to have from this piece, that we were able to give voice to the community because they had not had any way of dealing with their own local history. All of their emotions, all of their fears, and all of their anger had been suppressed. And so from the uprising and until, 2014, nobody had asked them, what do you think about this? How do you feel? So that's what we did. And in addition, we were able to basically provide a different historical narrative to the already existing canon. So we were able to say to the world, look, this uprising happened. You know what it says on Wikipedia. Here's how people feel about it. And at the end, we were able to share this globally because the piece was then presented in London just last month, which I think is great. And this is a picture from the performance, and I just want to explain to you artistically what's happening here. You see 3 performers. They have their hands tied together on top of their head. Now, we took this image from a photography of a bunch of prisoners sat on the floor with their hands tied behind their back. And so what we thought would be really, really cool was to place the hands on top of the head, because not only does that expose some of our most vulnerable parts, but it also offers some energy upwards. And it was kind of a nice sort of surrendering part of the piece, which was really, really powerful. So that was 5,100 Pentagon, which is one of my favorite projects to date. The next project I'm going to talk about is Making Dance Happen, which is a company that I run. We do projects in Peru yearly. So to date, we've had 2 projects. And we are going into our 3rd in January, and I'm really, really excited. In Peru, we work with a collaborator called Social Creativa, which basically help us with accommodation, with transport costs, with food, helping sourcing participants to our projects. And what I do is I take 2 to 5 international dance artists out to Peru. And then we basically spend about 3.5 weeks on site in Chincha Alta, which is a small community on the coast of Peru, which is a beautiful place. We have a mix of local outreach work, and then we have creative projects. And lastly, we have residency hours for the participating artists. We're able to have a 3-year commitment to the local community, and I think this is a really, really important point. If you are going to go out into the world, make sure that the impact that you have is sustainable. Don't go out and do any of that volunteerism. Be there, commit, and then follow through. And at the bottom, I just have our 3 values listed. The outcome of our last project was we managed to have 2 shows. We managed to make a total of 6 dance pieces in 3.5 weeks. We did a workshop in Lima, and we had over 80 participants countrywide take part in this project. And that's basically all I'm going to say about that project, because this is kind of a classic example of how you kind of generate impact globally. You know, we have volunteers. It's a nice and easy structure. And my last example is something that didn't go very well, because we learned from our failures too. Last year, I spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. I was in Riyadh, which is one of the most conservative places on the planet. And while I was out in Riyadh, I conducted quite a lot of research, and I managed to meet up with this local hip-hop group, which is called One Heart Group. It's a young group of male dancers in their 20s, and they are fabulous. They are some of the most warm-hearted people I think I've ever met. Just amazing. And what I figured out during the conversations and the workshops that I did with these boys was that they actually used dance as a way to form their own identities, which mirrored some of the constructs that we saw in the 70s in New York when hip-hop actually emerged. So that just says something about the power of dance within community. We can actually see these boys use hip-hop culture to stimulate positive impact in their local community. So even though they have a lot of authoritarian control, the regime and the establishment doesn't really like what they do, they're still dancing. Doesn't matter. They still find a way. This is largely because they're able to access the internet, so they're able to access education. And additionally, they have had hip-hop artists from Germany fly out to teach them popping and locking. I think that's really cool. We had a larger project ready, which involved more classical outreach work. We had a sustainability program that we wanted to carry out, and we were in talks with the German embassy and quite a lot of the establishment too, to see how we could encourage this project to go forward. However, we couldn't find any money, and we couldn't find any collaborators, so sadly the project had to end. What we did manage to do was we were able to have a dance debate. We were able to do one workshop, and we were able to challenge the perception of the role of dance in society. So even though this is one of the projects that probably had the least sort of physical, measurable impact, for me, this is one of the projects that really formed the way that I think about how we can use dance. So now we're going to go back to the video that we started with, and I'm going to talk over it so we don't need sound, but I'm going to explain to you what's actually happening, because I'm sure when you first saw it, you had quite a lot of ideas of what you thought was happening, but that's not true. So what you're seeing here is a video of 4 Arab men being led in a facilitative process by a white Western female. These guys have not had any training in contemporary dance practices. And what he's about to do is risk management. What we see at the back is very classical leadership skills. The guy at the very back is the leader of the group. He really wants to take charge. And the other guy is trying to really make him not do that. And so why I think this is a really good example of what dance can actually do is because we're in an undisclosed location in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, and we're dancing together. A female Westerner, I look the way I look, I can't change that. They are who they are, they can't change that. And yet we managed to have this conversation together. I think that's really beautiful. So I'm being told I don't have time for any more, so I'm going to skip the how-to and go right to the end slide, which is, I encourage you all to be the right kinds of rebels. I encourage you to go out into your local communities and see where can you help have a positive impact on your society and the people that you spend time with. I think what Ulf Hannes says is really important. As the world turns, today's center might be tomorrow's periphery, or the other way around, or whatever. You can see it up there, and I think that's just really important to think about yourself within the global context of what you do. And that's all I have to say to you today, so thank you very much.